Adolf Hitler remains one of history's most infamous figures, whose actions dramatically shaped the 20th century and left an indelible mark on the world. While much has been written about his rise to power and devastating legacy, many people are less familiar with the details of his origins, especially the exact place where he was born and the lesser-known facts surrounding his early life. Understanding where Hitler was born and the environment that shaped his childhood offers valuable insight into the man behind the monstrous persona. This article delves deeply into Hitler's birthplace, the town of Braunau am Inn in Austria, and uncovers surprising, lesser-known facts about his family, early life, and the historical context of his upbringing. Through this detailed exploration, you'll gain a fuller picture of Hitler's beginnings, a foundation to better understand how his early environment may have influenced his worldview and later actions. Where was Adolf Hitler born? The exact birthplace, Braunau am Inn, Austria. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20, 1889, in the small town of Braunau am Inn, located in Upper Austria near the German border. This modest town sits on the banks of the Inn River, directly across from the German town of Simbach am Inn. Braunau am Inn is a quiet, historic market town with a population of just a few thousand people at the time of Hitler's birth. It is known for its charming medieval architecture and picturesque location nestled between the Alps and the river. Hitler was born at Braunauer Hauptstrasse 15, in a rented apartment above a small guesthouse and tavern owned by his maternal grandparents. The house is a simple, unassuming two-story building with a beige facade, which today is a place of considerable historical significance due to its association with Hitler. The historical context of Braunau am Inn in 1889. When Hitler was born in 1889, Braunau am Inn was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a vast multi-ethnic empire that spanned much of Central and Eastern Europe. The town was a border settlement and a modest commercial hub, influenced culturally and politically by both Austria and Germany. The region's location on the border fostered a blend of Germanic and Austrian identities, which would later play a role in Hitler's own complex relationship with nationality and ethnicity. The town's economy was based on small trade, agriculture, and local crafts, with a relatively quiet daily life compared to larger urban centers like Vienna or Munich. Hitler's family and birthplace. Adolf's parents were Alois Hitler and Clara Polzel. Alois was a customs official, which explained the family's presence in the border town of Braunau am Inn, given its proximity to the customs checkpoint. Alois was originally born out of wedlock and had changed his surname from Schicklgruber to Hitler years before Adolf's birth, a lesser-known fact that hints at family complexities. Clara Polzel, Adolf's mother, was Alois's third wife and was much younger than him. She was known to be devoted and protective, traits that had a profound effect on Hitler's childhood and emotional development. The family's status was modest but stable, anchored by Alois's government job. Lesser-known facts about Hitler's birth and early life. 1. Alois Hitler's mysterious origins. Alois Hitler's background has long fascinated historians. Born as Alois Schicklgruber in 1837, his father was unknown, and his mother Maria Anna Schicklgruber never revealed who the father was. It wasn't until Alois was around 39 years old that he officially changed his surname to Hitler, believed to be his stepfather's name. This change was unusual and shrouded in mystery, feeding into later conspiracy theories about Hitler's ancestry. What's lesser known is that some historians speculate the name Hitler could have derived from Hiedler or Hudler, common names in the region, and records from that era were often inconsistent. This murky lineage contrasts sharply with Hitler's later obsession with racial purity. 2. The modest apartment and early childhood environment. Hitler's birthplace was a modest flat above a tavern, and the early years of his life were far from glamorous. He lived there only until he was about 3 years old before the family moved several times due to his father's work. Braunau am Inn was a small town where neighbors knew one another, and family life was tightly knit. However, the early environment was marked by Alois's reportedly strict and sometimes harsh parenting style, which impacted young Adolf deeply. 3. The impact of early family loss. Clara Hitler died when Adolf was just 14 years old from breast cancer, a traumatic loss that affected him profoundly. What's less commonly noted is that Adolf was extremely attached to his mother, and her death left a lasting emotional scar that influenced his later life and psychological state. His father, Alois, died earlier in 1903, which meant Hitler lost both parents at a young age, a double blow that shaped his character, ambitions, and feelings of abandonment. 4. Hitler's school days and early ambitions. Contrary to some myths, Hitler was not a particularly outstanding student. He was average, often clashing with authorities but excelling in art and history. He dreamed of becoming an artist and twice failed to get into Vienna's Academy of Fine Arts. The formative years in Austria, including the cultural atmosphere of Braunau and later Linz and Vienna, exposed him to various political ideas, including German nationalism, anti-Semitism, and pan-Germanism, ideas that would later fuel his ideology. 5. The role of Braunau am Inn in Hitler's identity. Though Hitler moved away from Braunau as a child, the town remained a symbolic birthplace that Hitler himself referenced. His birth there often came up in Nazi propaganda as proof of his German blood, despite Austrian citizenship. The political and social environment of his birthplace, Braunau am Inn, a border town at a crossroads. Braunau's location on the Austria-Germany border made it a melting pot of Germanic and Austrian culture, language, and political influence. This dual identity played a subtle but important role in shaping the regional mindset and, by extension, Hitler's own ideas of nationalism. The late 19th century was a time of intense nationalism in Europe, with ethnic identities becoming politicized. For Hitler, born in this liminal space, the concept of a unified German nation would later become a personal and political obsession. Austria-Hungary's multi-ethnic complexity. At the time of Hitler's birth, Austria was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a diverse empire encompassing many ethnic groups. This complex empire struggled with nationalist movements and tensions, which likely influenced the political climate that Hitler grew up in. His family and town were embedded within this multi-ethnic context, yet Hitler's ideology later focused on German ethnic supremacy and purity, a stark contrast to his diverse origins. Hitler's nationality and the confusion around Austrian origins versus German identity. Though born in Austria, Hitler considered himself ethnically German. This distinction is key to understanding his political ambitions to unify all German-speaking peoples under one Reich. For years, Hitler was an Austrian citizen before becoming a German citizen in 1932, a point often misunderstood or overlooked. His birth in Braunau am Inn, Austria, sometimes created confusion about his nationality, especially during his rise to power in Germany. How birthplace influenced his political career. Hitler's Austrian birth was a political liability early in his career in Germany, and he had to carefully navigate issues of citizenship. His birthplace was even used against him by political opponents to question his loyalty. Other lesser-known personal facts linked to his birthplace. The fate of Hitler's birth house. The house where Hitler was born survived both world wars but became a source of controversy in the post-war era. Many locals and governments grappled with how to handle the property, whether to preserve it, turn it into a museum, or demolish it to avoid glorification. In recent decades, the Austrian government has taken steps to discourage neo-Nazi pilgrimages by keeping the building unmarked and repurposing it for non-political use. Modern Braunau am Inn's relationship with its history. Braunau am Inn today is a peaceful town that has worked hard to distance itself from Hitler's legacy. There are memorial plaques and education programs to remember the victims of Nazism while condemning Hitler's ideology. Other surprising facts. Hitler's exact birth time is recorded as 6:30 p.m., a detail some historians use in psychological profiles. His birth coincided with the Jewish holiday of Passover that year, an ironic fact considering his later anti-Semitic agenda. Local folklore includes various myths about Hitler's birth, some exaggerated or false, underscoring how much the town's identity is tied to this dark chapter. Adolf Hitler's birthplace in Braunau am Inn, Austria, offers a fascinating window into his origins, a modest town on the border, steeped in a complex ethnic and political mix that played a subtle role in shaping his identity. While Hitler's later life overshadowed his early years with horror and destruction, understanding the nuances of his birth and childhood helps demystify the man behind the historical figure. The lesser-known facts about his family background, early environment, and the political context of his birthplace enrich the narrative beyond simple dates and locations. Braunau am Inn continues to wrestle with its association with Hitler, serving as a reminder of how history's darkest figures often emerge